The Philadelphia Eagles have a lot of young, promising pieces at defensive tackle, but there are also some big question marks with these prospects and with the future of Fletcher Cox. Free agent defensive tackle options coming your way right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Eagles fans. I'm Louis DiBiase, co-host of the Locked On Eagles podcast, analyst also over at Bleacher Report. He's Gino Camilleri, our scouting director, Eagles content at Bleacher Report as well, and my co-host. On today's edition of Locked On Eagles, the Eagles have some big questions at defensive tackle this offseason that will likely require them to add some reinforcements. We'll get into offseason options coming up next, plus who our Valentine is in the free agent pool, regardless of position. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 back if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. So, Gino, we started our offseason option series yesterday with edge rusher, of course, because Hassan Reddick's future is up in the air. And I think when you look at edge versus defensive tackle, like, sure, Josh Sweat you can consider a pillar. If they do bring back Hassan Reddick, he is as well. Hopefully Nolan Smith. But I think at defensive tackle, you know more like who are going to be the guys long-term, or at least who they hope are the guys, right? They have Jalen Carter, they have Jordan Davis, they have Milton Williams. Those are the three that they hope are the pillars long-term, and you hope Jalen Carter continues to be elite in year two. You hope Jordan Davis stays healthy and in shape the second half of the year and develops more as a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. You hope Milton Williams, who's shown flashes, can be a full-time player. But I will say, with all that being said and Fletcher Cox's future up in the air, you do likely want to bring in some sort of reinforcements in the form, to me, more of a veteran proven player if Cox is gone than another draft pick, because the youth and the talent is there. You might just want one guy you know who he's going to be next year.
I made reference to this point when we were talking about Javon Hargrave and how they had signed him that first time when he was coming off of that first Pittsburgh Steelers contract, and they kind of got him under the radar for a contract that seriously was undervalued at that time. Absolutely. I don't know how they got him for $10 million a year. You could be talking about something like that, Lou, because if Fletcher Cox is gone, that money has to go somewhere, right? Sure. And they have to find somebody, let's say like a Tim Jernigan level type of player. He doesn't have to be a 1A, heck, even a 1B, but somebody that fits maybe either a different prototype than a Jalen Carter or a Jordan Davis, or if Jordan Davis truly can't develop, maybe somebody else that fits that 0-1 tech mold that can alleviate some of that burden for Jordan Davis to be the best player that he can be. Because if you look at it, Jalen Carter and Milton Williams, even without Fletcher Cox, I think that's a really good 1-2 punch for sure in that area. But behind Jordan Davis, especially if he doesn't have the gas to go all three downs, you need somebody to fill in that role. Is Marlon Tuipulotu going to do that for you full time? I don't know. Do you draft somebody there? I don't know. This is a 27 to a 29-year-old type of signing, in my opinion. 3 years, bring him in, let him play 40% of the snaps behind Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter rather, and being your fourth type of interior guy. Howie Roseman could go into this market and find a bunch of those guys, and it probably won't cost you a ton of money because you're not going to be swimming with the big fish like the Justin Madubuike case, for example. Like, you're not going to pay that type of bag. It would be nice, but I don't know if you're going to go to that category. But if you talk second, even third tier type of guys for that interior defensive line, for what they've already invested versus what they have to replace, I think with Fletcher Cox gone, even if he comes back, you still are going to have like 30 to 35% of the snaps under his belt. You have to find somebody else in that rotation that more than anything can impact the rush on the interior. That's what they need. They didn't get that out of Jordan Davis last year. Nope. Beyond Fletcher Cox and Jalen Carter, Milton Williams flashed at times, but what was it besides them? They need all of them to contribute, because look at Chris Jones, man. He arguably won the Kansas City Chiefs.
And look at the Rams. They won with Aaron Donald. The Eagles won with Fletcher Cox. Like, having an elite pass rushing interior defensive lineman is extremely important. So yeah, like you mentioned, you hope that Milton Williams' flashes can turn into an every down player. You hope that Jordan Davis figures it out. But right now, all they are is exactly that. It's flashes. And so you want to see through that development. I'm not saying, although we'll talk about it in segment 2, I'm not saying to go out there and bring in Justin Madubuike, but you do need another player that can replace, and I really hope Fletcher Cox is back because I think he's the perfect 3A, 3B option next year.
Yes, dude, you got to believe.
Absolutely. He's coming off the best year he's had, I think, in the last 3 to 4 seasons. Even though he didn't have 7 sacks like in 2022, he was a much more consistent player. But if he's not back, I do think you want a proven guy that can fill that role in case all Jordan Davis is that zero tech run-stopping nose tackle. If Milton Williams, all he is a 3 or 4 in the rotation, you would like some sort of insurance plan.
And the thing with Vic Fangio is he likes to play with minimal down linemen. He likes to stand a lot of people up. So you're going to see a lot of looks where it's just 2 guys with their hand in the dirt.
Right.
So like we are saying, if you don't have somebody to fill in that role as that rotational piece, are you truly going to rely on those 3 guys to do it all? Hopefully, that would be great.
You hope. Because that's
Jordan
the investment.
Davis was a first-round pick, and
so
was
traded
Jalen
up
Carter,
for.
And Milton Williams was a premium pick as well.
Yeah.
But you need a veteran there. That is the thing that they're going to miss, regardless if Fletcher Cox is there. You need a veteran presence. I go back to when they added even Ndamukong Suh or Linval Joseph in that run. How instrumental was that, Lou?
Yeah, it was huge. So even if you bring back Fletcher Cox, I do think you need some sort of piece coming in. And it doesn't have to be through free agency. It could be through the draft. But I do think, considering the youth you already have there, if you throw in Tui Peloto, that's 4 guys that are young that you've invested a lot of time in development and to see through those projects. But I do think you would like a veteran that's proven it just in case, again, they've ceilinged out a little bit when it comes to more specifically Milton and Jordan, because Jalen Carter, Gino, I don't think there's any doubt, even though he hit a little bit of a rookie wall in the second half of the year, I think he's already one of the premier pass rushing tackles in football.
He's the guy that you're building your defense around. Everything starts with him. He's
your new Fletcher Cox. You just need, like you mentioned, your Timmy Jernigan, or they tried it with Malik Jackson. It didn't work out, but that kind of option, that kind of idea is what you need.
Remember Fletch and Benny Logan? That was low-key like
Benny
a player
Logan.
Benny Logan would be the perfect player. This is going back to play in this Vic Fangio scheme, man. He really would be a bigger body type of guy who could rush the passer at times, but could also stand up and defend the run.
Now just random Eagles defensive tackles are in my head. So Cedric Thornton just popped into my head when you said that for some reason.
That's so funny that you say that, because I actually ran into a guy in 2015, the Jameis Winston guy, who had a Cedric Thornton jersey on for some reason.
What a wild Eagles jersey.
Why are you buying a I love the guy.
Love it. I respect the hell out of that.
I do too. But back to the conversation, Lou. This is a position that I want to go back to the Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph point that I made, that when the Eagles got away from defending the run and being so good at stopping the run, look at where it led them. It led them to be a Swiss cheese defense, which they were in 7 of the last 8 games last year, because they couldn't stop the run on the interior, which allowed the passing game with they couldn't cover on the back end anyway, but it just opened them up to be even more susceptible. If you could at least depend on those guys that you made such a high investment on and say, this is where we are building it. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, the king and queen on our chessboard. Everything else is going to be determined by what we do with those 2 guys. And how do we support them, Lou? I think you bring in veterans.
I agree.
A young room, just somebody that's been around, that has played. I said it yesterday when we were talking about those edge players, guys that have played for teams that have made playoff runs and have played on the inside in big time rotational minutes. It doesn't have to be a guy that's an all-star, but rotational players that can handle. Because
this, you're not replacing Hassan Reddick potentially. Yesterday we were talking about top tier edge rushers you could bring in. We mentioned the likes of Josh Allen, Bryce Huff, Brian Burns, like really big names. At defensive tackle, I don't think you need that. It's more of the rotational pieces, as you're mentioning. I think there's a lot of veterans that could potentially be of interest to the Birds. We'll get into those options coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
Today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if you win your bets. Bet on all your favorite NBA players with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. It's unbelievable that the Sixers got Buddy Hield. I love Buddy Hield. I've been riding all the Buddy Hield props over at FanDuel, and you can too. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We continue our offseason option series with defensive tackle. And Gino, again, I think the tier 2, tier 3 signings are the big time focus. The compliments to Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, the insurance policy in case Fletcher Cox does retire and Davis and Williams kind of plateau. They're kind of who they are in 2024. But I will say, could you see a scenario where, and it's not likely, but let's say the Eagles do trade Hassan Reddick and they make some of these cap moves that frees up, we've talked about it, potentially $40 million. I do think Howie Roseman would be very intrigued at the idea of saying, what if I go like value at edge and I go more focused on the draft for the edge position, and I go out there and give Justin Madubuike a bag and pair him up with Jalen Carter. Like, that would be one of the scariest young defensive tackle duos in the NFL. It's a pipe dream, but they would kind of have the money to do it.
You're cheap at that position. And the thing
very
with that
cheap.
is, I think the writing on the wall would be there for Milton Williams then at that point.
If I get Madubuike, that's fine.
Yeah, you kind of got to take what you can get at that point. And
13 sacks last year on the inside. I mean,
you would have to believe that Milton is going to garner a third-round comp pick in free agency.
I'll take that.
Walk, and yeah, you 100% would take that. And Howie Roseman loves to make those investments. Javon Hargrave, who would have ever thought a couple years ago that he would have even been in the conversation to be a signing for that Philadelphia Eagles team? But Howie Roseman values that position a ton. And could you imagine? I think another player in that conversation, Lou, might not cost as much as Justin Madubuike, and he played for Vic Fangio last year. The Eagles were interested in him in the draft. You know where I'm going with this.
He's a loudmouth, but he would be, him and Jalen Carter would be the most annoying defensive tackle duo ever. Yeah.
Imagine those two rushing the passer together.
God. No, it would be a great combo.
I think I wasn't coming into the show with the expectation that they were going to go that route.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it, I mean, Jordan Davis has still got 3 years under that rookie contract. Jalen Carter still has 4 years under that rookie contract. It
really depends what you think about Davis and Milton long term. Can they be more? That's the main. If they go out and sign one of these guys, that's your answer.
Yeah, no, that really shows that. One, if you're willing to make that sort of move for a Christian Watkins, you truly believe that this is the time. This guy can add to your group. It might not mean that the top two guys are going anywhere, but the rotational players for sure are going to take a hit. And then those guys are going to have to really step up in a big way, but that's not a bad thing to have because we've seen some of the best teams in Philadelphia Eagles history have multiple elite level interior rushers. Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox for how long? And Timmy Jernigan set the precedent for it back in 2017. And even Fletcher and Jalen Carter at times were just an absolute pain to have to deal with.
The first half of the year, absolutely.
Quarterbacks hate interior. I'm sorry to interrupt, man.
No, you're good, man. They hate it.
You really got me thinking about this idea. That
it's if they go cheap on edge. Like, it's if they decide we're going to take Darius Robinson in the first round, or we're going to go with an edge in the second round and sign more of a Joshua Uche level player. We have the money to spend it on the interior. I would more prefer if they lose Reddick to sign one of those top-tier edge guys, but I'm just saying it would be an option. They do have the flexibility. I think it's more likely they go for I thought of this idea, and again, this is more of an Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph type of move, but let's say you lose Fletcher Cox to retirement. You want another veteran voice in the locker room with a very young group that needs less snaps. Like a Calais Campbell, if he plays this year, is an unrestricted free agent. It's not a super sexy pick on the field, but again, if you're looking for that veteran rotational leadership piece, that's a guy that's available.
So Christian Wilkins on Over the Cap, he's valued at $15.6 million. Justin Madubuike also valued at $15.6 million. So
it's like $10 million less than Hassan Reddick is asking for, and he's 26 years old.
I don't hate the idea of adding a player like Calais Campbell later in the season, Lou. I want to really get somebody in that's younger. Here's a name for you.
Okay.
Leki Fotu, out of Arizona.
Yeah. Bigger
body. He would be a perfect guy to be behind Jordan Davis in that rotation. Over the Cap has him valued at $1.5 million. Those are the type of guys I would want to bring in. Maybe a Sebastian Joseph Day, who just played for the Niners in the Super Bowl. Heck, even a Javon Kinlaw.
I was going to say, Kinlaw's a guy, he still is not meeting up to those first-round expectations that he had when he was a day one pick. But Gino, he's coming off the best year he's had, and he's still young and has some burst. If you're looking for a third-down defensive tackle rotational piece like that, it's a low-risk, high-reward type of move, and Howie likes those kind of decisions.
Kinlaw is valued at $3.8 million. I think you could get a contract done for him all day with that value. And that's where Howie is going to be looking. The Madubuike, Christian Wilkins thing would be a very good football move.
It's fun to think about for sure.
It would allow you to do exactly what you want within Vic Fangio's defense. But at the same time, which one of those three guys is going to be off of the field? Because you're going to say, Jordan Davis, you're sitting down for one or two of these snaps if we only have two guys with our hand in the dirt, right? And I'm with you that if you go value at edge, you can make that splash move, but there's so much value here in this free agent group, Lou. That's where I'm looking. Whereas edge, I think you could get a premier guy because there are so many premier guys that the market's going to be oversaturated, but there's the Javon Kinlaws of the world that didn't live up to their hype, and Leki Fotu is a rotational type of player. Those guys are all over this free agent group, and with $40 million, where are you going to invest that? Is it going to be linebacker? Is it going to be safety? If not, you could probably make a safe bet that it does end up on the defensive line.
I have a friend over in Cleveland media who told me Maurice Hurst is a player that you look at the stats.
Mo Hurst.
Only 1.5 sacks last year, but a PFF darling. Loved him when it comes to efficiency as a pass rusher. Had a pressure rate over 10% last year, which is really good for a defensive tackle. Gino, if you need, again, a third down springy pass rusher, like that's what I'm looking for. Because again, I'm not banking on Jordan Davis developing anymore as a pass rusher. I hope it happens, but it's not to me an expectation anymore like it was last year. I hope Milton Williams becomes that guy, but I'm looking for that Fletcher Cox replacement. I want that other pass rusher to complement Carter. And of course, you got to be able to stop the run because you were so bad at that last year, but pass rushing specialist is kind of where I'm looking if you're banking on those three staples panning out.
And that's the Christian Wilkins territory. That's the Madubuike territory. And do you talk about guys in the category of tier 2, tier 3 that might cost you a little bit less? What are you looking in terms of sack wise, Lou? Are you trying to get like 6 to 7 sacks? Because I think that's unfair.
I don't think if you're looking for a 3A, 3B type of rotational piece.
Okay.
I think you want more the higher numbers in pressure rate and win rate. And if you can get, 2 to 4 sacks for a guy that's playing limited snaps. Again, if we're talking big game replacing Davis or Milton, then I want a guy like Madubuike who's going to get me double digits. I would like that potential, but not for the scenario we're talking about where we really do believe in Milton and Jordan.
I do. I would like to keep Milton Williams in-house, and I would like to give him the chance to play.
They deserve
that
the year
role.
to do it, for sure.
We're talking about potentially signing a guy. You might already have that guy in the building.
Yeah.
That's a discussion that Howie.
It's not like they haven't shown anything. Well. I mean, it's not like they've shown nothing. What is his market
going to be? If I say he's going to be a third-round comp pick, he's going to have to be $14 million minimum. And I would pay him that because I don't think he has been used in terms of how much tread he has on his tires. He still hasn't played a full season as a starter. No. Heck, even as he's
never been a main top guy. 3 in the rotation. He's never been that.
Let's see it happen. I would love to see it happen.
You got to see through the development. I agree. That's why, again, Madubuike, I'm not going to stick my nose up at that, but I think these tier 2, tier 3 guys are more of the expectation for Howie in free agency. Gino, we're going to flip the script here, talk more about free agency, but we can do any position here. It's Valentine's Day. Who's Gino and my Valentines that we really want to lure over to Philadelphia? We'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Drive, passion, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W, that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Gino, it's Valentine's Day, so let's wrap up the show by trying to seduce one of these free agents in a football way. Let's try to lure somebody over to Howie Roseman in the front office. If there's a guy on both sides of the ball, let's just give me one free agent that you just want badly for the Birds this year. And you can do any tier. Who is it?
Dude, that was quite the introduction to said segment.
Love is in the air, baby.
I totally get where you're going with this, and it kind of alludes back to our off-season simulations episode.
Yeah.
One guy that I loved at draft season, one guy that I fell in love with down in Mobile. I think he would be an excellent addition. We haven't talked about this position yet, but we will get there. Safety, Kyle Duggar. I think
that was your guy. Yeah.
He runs like a gazelle. You talk about needing speed on the back end. Watching Justin Evans out there at times last year just plod through gravel and cement. It was not fun. And Sidney Brown, when is he going to be ready to come back from that injury? Is he going to be ready week 1?
Might be a bit because of the timeline. Yeah, exactly. Later in the season, week 17 injury, week 18. Yeah, probably a little bit later.
If you look at the track record for other guys that have tried to rally for week 1, it's kind of put them back. And I wouldn't want to hinder that, or I want him at 100%. If he's even 90%, just let him fully heal. But you bring in Duggar, somebody who is so good against the run, and Vic Fangio loves that. He needs that in his guys that are going to play on the back end. If you want to play this type of system, your safeties have to be able to tackle. Look at Javon Holland last year. Not the same type of player in terms of coverage, but Kyle Duggar, man, he comes downhill quick. He can cover so much ground sideline to sideline. Is he going to be a true free safety for you? No, but he's a chess piece from 8 to 14 yards. You can do just about anything with him.
I totally agree. My Valentine in free agency is Curtis Samuel. I think this guy would be perfect as that third receiver for Kellen Moore's offense, a pre-snap motion gadget that can play in the backfield as well. Gino, you can use him kind of as a poor man's Deebo Samuel in a way on pass-heavy situations. And unlike a guy, Darnell Mooney would be another crush for me that I would love to have in Philly. But I think Mooney still has wide receiver 1 or 2 upside where he's going to want to go to a team where he'll have a bigger opportunity than Philly. Whereas Curtis Samuel, he kind of is what he is at this point. He's a very good 3 in the NFL. And I think he's explosive, great run after the catch ability. I think he's the perfect guy that's going to, get more meat off the bones with those 3 to 5 touches, maybe a little bit more in this offense. I've always been a big fan of Curtis Samuel going back to his Ohio State days, Carolina. I love the versatility. And you look at what happened with Washington. They have 2 studs at receiver. I thought he was the perfect complement to Dotson and McLaurin. I think he could be the perfect complement to Smith and Brown.
And you have to like what he could be in Kellen Moore's offense. And
that's the thing. I think it's a great fit.
You talk about needing a gadget player, somebody that like you have to manufacture touches for. Well, bingo. How do they run this offense? If you aren't somebody that wins one-on-one, they're going to manufacture a ton of space for you. And I'm with you that this is a type of guy. His value will never be lower,
right?
But you can see his value not skyrocket, but you're going to make some money on it down the road to the point where you could legitimately see him garner a comp pick if you get wide receiver 3 value out of him. You're going to pay him for such, and I think you will design a role for him, and that's what you're going to pitch him. You're going to say, man, look at what Keenan Allen did last year. This
Right.
guy, we don't have that guy. We don't have somebody that runs routes like that can get in and out like that. To the same point, Lou, I'm all on the board of the short kings just running this team.
Yeah.
Britton Covey's one. Let's pair him up with Hunter Renfrow,
Yeah.
and we're going to have just the smoothest collection of point guards.
You've been
that can
manifesting the
run out of
Renfro to
slot.
Philly connection. I
want
think
it
it's going to happen. It could happen.
so bad. And I don't think he's going to get the contract that he would have gotten a couple years ago.
No.
Because the Raiders
For the
didn't
last
use
2
him the
years,
way
they
that
haven't played him at all the last 2 years.
And he's already got 1,000 yards under his belt, Lou, and
Yeah.
he gets tons of catches. I love A.J. Brown. I love Devontae Smith, right? And they both can operate in volume. But where do they operate best, Lou? In explosive areas. If you can increase their efficiency and then go and say, here, Hunter Renfrow, we're going to hit you in volume so we can open up those lanes for those guys. That's what this offense would need. And how, hearts in your eyes thinking about what this offense could look like, just having guys that can get in and out of their routes and bring back these choice routes where you're just operating off of leverage and even bringing a pass catching back. The last one I'll say, Antonio Gibson. I loved him in the draft as well. A pass catching back. I want to have everybody on this offense be able to catch a football and do it very well.
I totally agree.
You have to be a total football approach. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
You got me hyped up.
No, that's good. I like all three options for sure. Let us know what you think on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at GC24_football, and at DBLCLOE. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We'll be back tomorrow and Friday for you. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go, Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.